Your summer starts now with Memorial Day deals at the Home Depot. It's time to fire up summer cookouts with the Next Grill 4-burner gas grill on special buy for only $199. And entertain all season with the Hampton Bay West Grove 7-piece outdoor dining set for only $499. This Memorial Day, get low prices guaranteed at the Home Depot. While supplies last, price and valid May 14th through May 27th. U.S. only, exclusions apply. See homedepot.com/price match for details.
You said this place was steps from the water.
We just haven't found the steps yet.
How much did we save?
Enough.
Enough to get lost?
Or you could book a stay with Hilton.
Welcome to your oceanfront room, just steps from the water.
The Hilton sale is on now. Book on Hilton.com or the Hilton app and save up to 20% to get the stay you expected. When you want savings, not surprises, it matters where you stay. Hilton, for the stay.
I really found as I matured as a coach and had more opportunities and were exposed to more guys that working with a 16-year-old kid isn't much work working with a 26-year-old kid or 32-year-old kid. That there's certain things you got to do for each one of them, regardless of their age, to help them be the best they can be.
Welcome to another episode of the Mushroom Society on the Coach and Coordinator Network. For more than 40 years, the C.O.O.L Clinic has brought offensive line coaches together to learn football, share ideas, and grow the profession. Every year, some of the best coaches in the game step into these sessions to talk scheme, fundamentals, leadership, and what it really takes to build a winning team. This conversation is one of those sessions. Before Dick Vermeil became a Super Bowl winning head coach and Pro Football Hall of Famer, he was an offensive line coach, a high school coach, a junior college coach, and a teacher. In this keynote from his 2026 C.O.O.L Clinic from this past weekend, Coach Vermeil moves beyond X's and O's to talk about leadership, relationships, culture, discipline, hard work, and the responsibility coaches carry every single day. Bob Wylie opens the session by introducing one of football's great teachers. Then Coach Vermeil shares what he calls is his common sense principles of coaching. If you enjoy this conversation, you can get full access to the complete 2026 C.O.O.L Clinic replay library, along with presentations from the offensive line coaches at every level of football. Go to thec.clinic.com or click the link in the show notes. Here's Coach Wylie and Coach Vermeil.
All right, welcome, guys. This is a big treat for me and for us. Over the years, we've had a number of guest speakers. We've had John Gruden, we had Andy Reid, John Harbaugh, Sam Weiss. I said there's been a number of guys, okay, that spoke, okay, but this one is the top of the line guy. This gentleman is your true passionate football coach. He loves the game. He coached it for a number of years. He spent 15 years, I believe, as a head football coach in the National Football League at the Eagles and at the Rams and the Kansas City Chiefs. He won a Super Bowl at the Rams, and he will give you some great football knowledge. And it gives me great pleasure to
You're exaggerating, Bob. You're exaggerating.
Great pleasure to introduce Dick Vermeil.
Thank you for distorting my reputation there a little bit, but really, at my era in life now, at 89 years old, I don't find myself talking football very much, unless it's Sunday and my wife is sitting in the other chair and we're watching the game and we're discussing what's going on. I'm just not around football people. I don't really spend any time in the Eagle organization, and so I talk with Al Saunders often. I visit with Mike Martz once in a while and some former assistant coaches, Mike Solari. In fact, I'm going to Kansas City for 3 days as of tomorrow, and I'll hopefully get to spend some time with Andy Reid on the practice field there and that kind of thing. But all I am now is a fan with 35 years of having coached it. Because Bob, I cherish the years I coached before I ever got in pro football as much as I cherish the years of coaching pro football. You learn so much. I started out as assistant in high school and Del Mar High School, 1959. I was assistant football coach and head track coach and taught freshman English. I set that class back a year. The next year I was the head coach in Hillsdale High School. I kept moving. I couldn't keep a job. Assistant in junior college, head coach in junior. But when I was a head coach in high school and a head coach in junior, I coached my own offensive line. And I gave the job coaching the backs, the quarterbacks, and those skill guys to my assistant because we only had one assistant. But I coached the offensive line because I felt, especially at that time, and I still do, really, that's where the game all starts. And that's where you create how you play the game and the tempo with which you play it and how you positively influence the rest of the players and how you play in that offensive line.
This episode is brought to you by the Mushroom Society. The Mushroom Society was built for offensive line coaches who want more than a clinic weekend. Inside the community, coaches get access to year-round learning through film sessions, live clinics, roundtables, Q&As, office hours, coaching discussions, and conversations with offensive line coaches from high school, college, and the NFL. It's a place to ask questions, share ideas, solve problems, and keep developing throughout the season and off-season. Membership also includes access to the C.O.O.L Clinic archive, exclusive learning drops, and the 2026 C.O.O.L Clinic replay library. Learn more at mushroom-society.com or click the link in the show notes.
I have spent a lot of time after coaching, going all the way back and think, teaching, coaching, leading, structure, organization, and all that kind of stuff. And I started getting opportunities to speak to large companies, and it was fun. I enjoyed it. It forced me to think, and it's amazing. You get in these companies, they have some of the same problems we had as coaches. People, don't want to work, don't want this, don't want to structure, don't want this, don't want that. And so I sat down and started thinking about what I learned in working with people through the 35 years, starting 1959, 35 years of coaching, high school, junior college, UCLA, Stanford, and the people. And I'm so fortunate. In my coaching career, I have worked with 30 people that were called an NFL head football coach. Either were when I worked for them, were before I worked with them, or became after I worked with them. 30 guys, and 3 of them in the Hall of Fame: Walsh, George Allen, and Sid Gilman. So, and then the likes of Al Saunders
and you.
And these guys. Oh, yeah, but I tell you, there are guys that aren't in the Hall of Fame and deserve it more than I do right now. I'll tell you that right now, Bob. There's some fine football. Can you imagine the last 2 years? Mike Holmgren doesn't get in. He's the finalist and doesn't get in. And then Belichick this last year. You kidding me? You kidding me? I feel guilty being in there. Gee, buddy. Those guys, fantastic football coaches. The best of the best. But anyway, I started thinking about everything, and I put it all down. And I call them common sense principles of coaching. Okay, common sense principles of coaching, it started all the way back in high school kids, and I really found as I matured as a coach and had more opportunities and were exposed to more guys that working with a 16-year-old kid isn't much work working with a 26-year-old kid or 32-year-old kid. That there's certain things you got to do for each one of them, regardless of their age, to help them be the best they could be, and I've given it thought. I call them common sense principles. Number one, make sure people know you care. How simple is that? But I tell you, some people don't give a shit. You know that. And I learned things from other coaches. I learned things from players, but I learned as much about working with guys and helping them be what they had the ability to be. And sometimes they didn't even know they could be. They just hoped they could be. And just from the young kids. And each level I moved up, it was the same thing. They were just more skilled as athletes, but emotionally and fundamentally in their own minds, I say, shit, there's no same level of growth in maturity just because you go from 18 to 21, 21 to 23. I've coached kids 18 years old and mature as hell. I've coached guys 32 years old. It's got a long ways to go yet. And so have you, Bob. But I really started out, I know the number one thing, if kids really know you care, even the guys you cut, if they know you care, very few people have the self-discipline to give their best to somebody they don't really care about. And it all starts with you, Ken. I've had so many I'll give you an example. The last game I coached was January 1st, 2006, January 1st. We're playing Cincinnati for our 11th win. We won our 11th game that night. And the game's over. We don't go to the playoffs with 11 wins. The next day, I'm in the locker room saying goodbye to everybody and all that stuff. And the guys are stripped down. And I'm sitting next to Tony Richardson, my fullback. We're all, I'm going home. I announced I'm going home. And this big guy comes walking over. John Browning, about 6'4.5", 293, defensive lineman, explosive, tough, just a great. Never, ever said a word. Never said. I mean, you didn't know if he could speak. He just came to work and went to work. And he leans over and he says, "Go, George. I just want you to know I love you." It startled me. And I thought about it. So we finished. They all go. And the next day, we're having the final meeting. And after I said, "John, I want to come and I want to talk to you." And it still chokes me up to think about it. I said, "What made you say that to me?" He said, "Well, Coach, I've been coached by a lot of coaches, but you're the only guy that ever really cared about me." You talk about a lesson learned. The last meeting and football team I ever had, that came out of it. So that helped me going back, evaluating what's important in coaching. They got to know you care, no matter how they chew your. I was raised by a combination of Bobby Knight and Bill Parcells. My dad, my frickin' ass. Garage was 25 yards behind the house. 24 hours a day he was there. On my ass all the time. But I always knew he loved me. And I think some coaches are so good at that, driving kids, pushing kids, but the kid knows that coach is doing it in my best interest to help me be the best I can be. And I learned that, and I kept learning it as I go on. But on that final meeting, that came out of it. That put the exclamation point on the end of my career. Yeah, I've thought that all along, but I've never had it expressed so warmly and sincerely from a guy I coached for 5 years. And that probably didn't have a 15-word conversation very often at any time. So I think all coaches, sometimes we can get so involved in what we're doing, we forget some of these kids aren't raised in the same environment with the strong philosophy of building character and building a mature approach to maturity and emotionally and physically. And I'm so glad that came out, because I thought that all along, but I never had it hit me like that. So when I speak to people, I just first said, I stole this term, is players don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. No matter how much you chew their ass, get on them. If they know you care, they got you. And I say this, and I said it. If you care, they will care. If you care, they will care. Even when you're mad at her, and those kind of things. The Navy SEALs have a great statement. It's simple, but not easy. It's simple, but not easy. Building that kind of rapport with a player and your team, it's harder today, maybe a little harder today, because the free agency and all that guys. I was with 4 of my starters last night at a big banquet downtown, played for me all the way from all 7 years with the Eagles. Okay. And they are so close together, and they care so much about each other, and they care about me, and I care about them. And it just keeps making me emphasize when I talk about working with people is that they frickin' know you care. Common sense is not always common practice. It's amazing. Yeah. There are a few situations in my career in a meeting room that if I could go back, I would change it. Because I learned this by being in a locker room many, many times as a broadcaster. And I was always in there, and I'd sit next to players and listen to them talk. And, and I finished my broadcasting career knowing that NFL players want structure. NFL players want discipline on the football team. I mean, the things I've heard players say, and I've heard players say, the only guys that get their ass chewed around here are the guys that aren't getting paid very much money, and those kind of things. And So I used to, if I had a bone to pick with a player, I did it in a squad meeting in front of everybody. And I'm talking about first round picks and this kind of things. And there are a few times that I absolutely blew my frickin' stack, and I can't retract what I said. Okay, I could go back and say I'm sorry, but it doesn't change it. And if I had it to do over again, I would use better discipline within being pissed at a superstar in a meeting. I would do it a little better. I would make my point, but I wouldn't do it as crude, let's say, Bob, as I did it then. So that's a lesson. But I know this: if you care, then yes. The other thing I always said: your team will not be what you are not. I really believed in being a good example for my squad. I wanted players to be good examples to the next guy they sat next to in the locker room. And I just say that. And believe me, don't ever think players aren't evaluating you. They remember what you say, how you say it, what you do and what you don't do, and what you did here and what you did there. What you said to this guy was different than what you said to this guy. Boy, being a good example for what you want your coaches and your team to be is, I think, a very critical thing to think about. It's not easy. Players, I just think, have to see in you what you want to see in them. And they go by, if you do what you say you're going to do, regardless of who he is, starting quarterback or third right guard, and it's all pretty quick, they recognize that there isn't a degree of, in terms of personalities and caring, the degree is in just the differences in ability. And you treat people all the same way. I know I tried to be what I wanted my people to be. I tried to be what I wanted my staff to be. And I expected players to be sitting next to a guy that was a good example for them. People ask me many times, Bob, how do you handle the trouble player? I said, poorly. I handle him poorly. For the most part of my career, I had the authority enough. Hey, I've cut a first-round pick out in the second year, during mid-season, sent him out of the outbuilding, and ownership allowed me to do it. But I'll tell you, it gets the attention of everybody because it adds credibility to what you say, because what you say is what you do. And I've listened to locker rooms talking to kids. I've walked out of offensive meetings in the NFL, sat next to the quarterback, and he turns to me and say, "Can you believe all that shit?" It startles you. It startles you. And then I can sit next to guys and they're talking about, this freaking guy is an unbelievable football coach. He's improved us so much. He's talking about a line coach or an individual coach. Kids know. And if you surround your team with people that are good examples to everybody in that team, it makes a difference in how they end up playing. It deepens the commitment to how they work, how they prepare, and how they play, and how they care about each other. And if you say you don't do what you say you're going to do, you lose all. Bob, you coached a long time. There's no secrets in a freaking NFL locker room. How long does it take? One meeting, and it's around the whole room knows about it. But I was really with my coaches that same thing, guys. Shit, be what you want your guys to be. Be what you want your guys. Treat your guys like you want to be treated. And I always thought that helped us, and I learned it, and I have it in the back of my mind. But they evaluate how you handle adversity. They evaluate how you distribute credit. They evaluate how you handle success. They evaluate how you handle losing. You're always, as a head coach and assistant coach, you're always being evaluated by the guys you're in front of. If you're always aware that it's important for you to be the example you want them to be, I think it really helps. But, it's how you handle success. Some guys don't handle it real well. How you handle adversity. Shit, when we came to Philadelphia, my staff, they're the losingest team in football. We didn't have first, second, or third round pick my first 2 years. We didn't have a first or second round pick the third year. My first pick, who I was with last night, Reggie Welch, third round pick out of Georgia Tech as linebacker. Okay. And we were in the playoffs the third year. Why? Because everybody cared about each other. There wasn't a guy sitting next to him that wasn't a good example. Every turd bird was gone. Every guy that thought he was bigger than life. I think it was easier to do that, but boy, if you sit next to a guy in a locker room and you just really enjoy sitting next to him and listening to what he has to say, and if you go into a meeting room, you can't wait to hear what that coach is going to say and how he's going to evaluate and how he's going to critique and how he's going to make you better. I think it makes it really helps the depth of your organization. Yeah, and the other thing I'd say, the term they throw around today now is culture. That every so many years, there's certain words, heavy words that come on that everybody uses. Oh, we built the culture. We were building things. I didn't call it culture. I didn't know what it was. It was that's just what we do. Then for a while, it's spirit, esprit de corps, and all these kind of things. But really, build an atmosphere in which players enjoy coming in, even after losing. That's hard to do. When we go to the Rams, they lost more games in the 90s than any team in football by one game. The Jets, had lost one less, okay, something like that. But so a difference of one loss, okay. And in 3 years, we're in the Super Bowl. But we went right back to the same training camps we used at the Eagles. What they were was advanced spring practice, where everything was broken down by position, by technique, by fundamental, and there was we didn't care how much time it took, how many days you wear pads, and what it took. Inside drills, middle drills, weak side drills, strong side drills, perimeter drills, 7-on-7s, 9-on-7s, everything in pads. And the third year, we win the world championship. Okay. And fortunately, there were 9 guys that went lined up and played in the Super Bowl that were there when we got there. 9 guys left. 9 guys. But I'll tell you this, they could play. And they knew what hard work was. And it was different. It was different because the trend had changed in the NFL to different kinds of practices. Well, I didn't know different kinds of practices. I watched colleges practices and I watched pro teams practice. But I went back to how we did it in Philadelphia. It's, Bob, just like college spring practice. Every position was broken down. And we built a working culture and a culture and atmosphere. The more intense the atmosphere is over long periods of time, the deeper relationships are developed within people because they're all good examples to each other. They respect this guy at a deeper level because they see him go through it and they're bitching and moaning and throwing their helmets thinking you're crazy. But I like reading Second World War stuff. I like reading Navy SEAL stuff. The esprit de corps, the culture that they build is built by toughness, adversity, and handling it and caring about each other. And no one is allowed not to fit. If you don't fit, you're not here. You're not here. And that came out, like, again, authenticity is a powerful, powerful leadership trait. And authenticity within the personality. If Casey Wigman knows what Will Shields is all about, there's a start of an offensive line culture right there. Those 2 sets. You can't believe what Will Shields would do on a practice field, even in a freaking walkthrough, even on Saturday, to watch him prepare to play. Casey Wade, those guys, but that's what builds your culture. Spirit is an emotional muscle, but it's got to be exercised. Enthusiasm is an emotional muscle, but it's got to be exercised. And it can't be exercised if they don't think you care, if you don't have good examples, and you aren't aware of the kind of culture or the kind of team you're trying to build. I don't hear YouTube, Bob. I haven't heard an interview in years with that. I don't hire a coach. They're talking about building a culture. They're talking about culture. Well, that's what it is. It's all hard work and discipline, structure, and getting rid of those guys that don't fit. People buying into the fundamentals being taught and not talking about, well, this is the way we did it over here. And we were pretty successful doing it this way. Bullshit. This is the way we're going to do it here. This is how long we're going to be on the practice field. This is what we're going to, this is how our meetings are going to be. This is how we're going to, and this is what we're going to do when we go off the field. We're going to have some good times, but on the field, we're going to go out there and get better. Building that freaking culture. And today I think it's a word that is almost overused, but I think it's tougher to build the culture that you really want, that you and I were allowed to build because of the restrictions on the coaches and those kinds of things. With Jaworski the other day, I coached quarterbacks in the off season. I'd take them over. If I didn't have a receiver, I'd go stand in positions where I wanted to drop and throw and all these kind of things. You could work with them anytime you wanted to. Anytime you wanted to. It's so different today. We didn't have the OTAs. We didn't have, and those are nice to have. Bob, my first week of OTAs in St. Louis, remember, it's voluntary. We couldn't go 11 on 11. We couldn't put 11 defensive, 11 offensive players by position on the field the same time first week. It had disintegrated so much, by the second year, we had third year, nobody ever missed. We had far more guys living in town, and those kinds of things. I think that's all a result of players knowing you care. There's a lot of good examples around you from the coaches and the players and the department and the atmosphere when you come in that, even getting your ass beat. I used to put, today it's easy. I put highlight films of the good plays we made in games we lost. What we got to do is keep adding more good plays because it's so easy to only dwell on what you did wrong. And it's surely got to be discussed and coached and drilled and that kind of thing. But when you're losing, how you handle losing will determine how long you lose. And if you don't handle it properly, you create your own issue. You create your own issues, I think. Anyway, believe me, I had enough spirit. We won 9 games in 2 years before we won the world championship. 9 games. But my staff and my guys, we treated losing properly. This is a fertilizer for getting better. Shit, you want to grow a great garden, you fertilize. You want to build a football team, you fertilize it. But you got to fertilize the tough part of it. The tough part of it. Everybody handles success pretty well. But anyway, I believe that. But we never discuss losing in permanent terms. Never discuss losing in permanent terms. We tried not to. And John wouldn't say you kids. And I've spent 2 years around John. He was retired when I was the head coach at UCLA, but he came to work every day. He sat next to me at breakfast during training camp. All seemed to he'd come to work, and he'd say, you can't antagonize and positively influence at the same time. That was John's thinking, and he was right. And George Allen said to me one time, working for George, and he was an original piece of work. He said, the only coach in the NFL that doesn't have problems is dead. They buried that guy. He says, when you become a head coach, what you got to do, you and your staff have got to be able to solve problems and get better because of the problems you've been confronted with. If somebody can't do something well and he's the only guy you got, find a way to make him better. Find a way to help him get better. And what happens is that guy starts appreciating what you're trying to help him do. God, it's amazing. The championship, the Super Bowl team of 99, left guard was a free agent, Tommy Newton. The center, Rudy Doria, was a free agent. Adam Timmerman was a free agent, non-drafted football players, all 3 of them. But you talk about character, you talk about work ethic, and talk about being coached by people that helped them get better and take advantage of the skills. But if you don't put them in the right atmosphere, and all you do is rip them down for what they can't do, then many times they can never do it any better. And I believe that. And I think I learned a lot of that from working with younger kids. Some guys, you call them a turd bird, they believe you. Maybe that's the way they were raised. But I know I was never an intimidator. And I respected intimidators. I've told Bill Parcells, I wish I had a little more of you and me, Bill. I think I'd have been a better coach because there were times I should have been more of an intimidator than I wasn't. But it wasn't me, but it's who I am. But some guys can go overboard in that area, especially with the younger kids, especially with the younger guys. And I always felt like they have to be careful and they have to know, But very, very few people outperform their own level of self-esteem. Very few. And, a lot of these kids we get are gifted athletes, but the deep self-esteem is a little shaky. And I became aware of that as I matured as a coach and working with the different age levels. And self-esteem is different than confidence. A guy can have confidence and ability to do this, but no confidence in doing this. When you enhance the self-esteem of how a person feels about himself, that positively influences every fundamental he uses on the field, in the locker room, off the field, downtown with his own family. And I learned that. And there's three things, I call it RAP, everybody needs: recognition, appreciation, and praise. You can't wholesale it. Don't frickin' praise somebody who's not playing well. Don't tell him how good he is playing when he isn't, because players are evaluating you. They're listening to you. And when they see, when you do well, you get it right, and you get that kind of praise. And when you're not getting it. You're getting the criticism, the critique, and how to do it better. All that was every bit as important in the NFL. It was in high school, it was in junior college, and it was at UCLA. Every bit as important. I really, really believe that. I just tried to teach it as you build your atmosphere, just never be satisfied. Nobody is immune from tough days. Nobody. You know that, Bob. I know that. We were around the league a long time. Nobody is immune. And how you handle those immune days, how you handle those bad days. One time, John Wooden, I'm walking down the hall right after his signing day. And he says, "Coach, you look down." I says, "Yeah, Coach Wooden, yeah, I'm down. I just lost three real good players to USC." He looks me right in the eye. He leans forward and he says, "Don't worry about losing players to SC. They're always going to have better players than you." He says, "Just make sure that you make the ones you have the best they could be, and everything else will take care of itself." I never, ever, ever forgot that. And that was a 3-minute conversation. I never forgot that. It implanted on me, and going through losing seasons and losing games, and I got so I couldn't get over a loss. And I'd be Wednesday running my own offense, thinking what I should have done last week to win. It's a terrible, terrible rut to get into. And it negatively influences your preparation for the next one. And I tried to. And then I got so, if we won a frickin' game, I wouldn't enjoy it. I'd be all the way, not all tied up and not thinking about what I got to do to win the next one. Shit on the plane flying home, not enjoy it. So that's why I ended up having to leave coaching. But so a lot of this stuff I learned from my own personal failures, and then being around and watching good coaches and work with the people. Treat a person as he sees himself. He may remain as he sees himself. Treat him as he ought to be. Treat him as what you think he ought to be as a coach. And maybe he'll end up being a lot better than he thought he could be. I've always believed. And again, that you learn that as you go along. We always tried to define a plan. And we were always on the same page. We always defined a plan. I should have brought it to. I have a big sheet that has every practice on it, training camp. Every freaking practice. Every reps on a big sheet. It's all in color coded. Okay. And every head coach, every assistant coach had one of those, and they had the broken one down by page by page by page. Every single day of training camp, all the way through. You could go to the 4th week in training camp, look at the 4th period during that period, and you would know what's expected to be done. You would know if you're going into the red zone, you better work on 3rd down in the red zone as well as 1st down in the red zone. You better work on 3rd and 1 in the red zone. And you better work on 3rd and 5 on the goal line rather than just goal line. These kinds of things. And I learned that from watching other coaches coach and in preparation and these kinds of things. But to have a plan, have it defined, have the process, the value system, the core values of everything you're teaching, and make sure it's repeatable. No sense in having some kind of thing you really believe in and not continually repeat it. But I said this to my assistants, and I kept telling myself, regardless of what, they've got to believe in you before they'll believe in your plan. So you draw a map that they all understand. Make sure they believe in you as they start interpreting your plan and evaluating your plan and really starting to believe this is what we're going to do. And they're looking down the road and seeing, oh, hey, that shit, they know we're going to be doing a practice field 3 weeks from now, and I think that really, really helps a team to have confidence that they have a plan. They're in a direction. They're all going in the same direction. They know when they're going to do things, why they're going to do things, and even more important, they're going to be taught how to do it well. And it's going to be demanding. It's going to be tough. And I backed off my 3rd year, the Rams, a little bit, because I felt we have gotten everything out of the group that's coming back that we could get them to this level. So I think I took about 17, 18 minutes out of the practice field and out of the practice schedule in the whole routine each day, double days, but we still had the double days, still had the pads most of the time on double days. When the map you draw for your team is believable because they trust you and your coaches and players, they'll follow, they'll get it done. But if they don't believe you, they don't trust you, they aren't going to get it done.
Thanks again for listening to this keynote session from the 2026 C.O.O.L Clinic featuring Hall of Fame coach Dick Vermeil. If this conversation helped you think differently about leadership, culture, teaching, or building offensive linemen, there's a lot more waiting for you inside the full 2026 C.O.O.L Clinic replay library. You'll get presentations from some of the top offensive line coaches in football covering fundamentals, run game, pass protection, practice structure, player development, and the details that shape winning offensive lines. You can also continue the conversation year-round inside the Mushroom Society, where coaches connect through live sessions, film study, Q&As, coaching discussions, and ongoing professional development built specifically for offensive line coaches. Visit thecooolclinic.com or mushroom-society to get access. The link to both are in the show notes. Follow all we're doing at coachandcoordinator.com and follow us on X at the C.O.O.L Clinic and at Coach K. Grabowski.